It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
No fear, no fear, no fear here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock. And my guest for this hour is Martin Andelman. Now, he is author of the book RFP Nation. Now, I'm not in the industry, so Martin, you got to help me out. I think RFP is a request for a proposal, right?
Yeah, that was my last book. Yeah.
Okay, now let's go ahead and what we want to talk about is I want to go ahead and let you introduce yourself. I do a little research, and man, you write. You start doing giving presentations this October about the banks be a going down. Here comes the Army. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, I write a blog, Mandelman Matters, that I started a couple of years ago, and I guess about 400 articles there now. I started writing to track the meltdown. I mean, just track what was going on since 2007.
Okay, now let's go ahead and let's get right to it. What I want to talk about is this can's been kicked down the road for a long time. The foreclosures, we're in Arizona here. What state are you in?
I'm in California.
So you and we're living in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So we know what's going to happen. There's, my opinion is, certainly here in Phoenix, my wife is a real estate agent, and we track a lot of this stuff. And, of course, we do a lot of news on Freedom's Phoenix. And we know that at least, I can't see any reason why we're going to have less of a reduction of at least 15, 20, or even more % of the home values from what they are right now here in Phoenix, and I'm sure California has got its own problems. So I'm going, how is this going to impact the banks? I mean, give me, just get right to it, man. Tell me what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, first of all, 15 or 20%, I think, is nothing from here. We've only begun this. This is not the end. It's the beginning. I mean, I just want to start with the fact that we don't have a real estate market, right? There's no market here. I mean, it's not a real estate market. There's how many homes in the shadow inventory? 7 million? I mean, there are people living in homes in Phoenix today. They haven't made a mortgage payment in 2 years. Are they being evicted? No, they're not. They're still living in the home. Why? Because the banks can't afford to take them back. So if the banks were to actually foreclose on and foreclose on all the homes that they could foreclose on, and when you take into account the shadow inventory, I mean, well, just from that alone, with no further decline, what would the real estate prices be? They'd be much lower than they are now just from that. And the foreclosure crisis, look, frankly, at this point, we don't even have something on the drawing board that might stop it. So as we sit here today, I mean, there's nothing, there's no plan. I mean, there's nothing in place. So, I mean, I tell people all the time, I mean, there's no lending. The government is the only lender. I mean, that's it. There's no other lending. There are no securitizations. There's no private mortgage market. It's either Fannie, Freddie, or FHA. That's it. So there's no lending. I don't know what you do above 729. You're not giving these $5 million homes. That people have. They've been living in them for 2 years. No one's made a mortgage payment. Somebody asked me recently, why don't they take those back? It's like, are you kidding me? Because then they'd have to try to auction them off, and we'd find out that they're worth $1 million.
That's one thing that I want to make sure the audience understands, and I'm sure a lot of my audience already does, but I want to get your take on this, is the balance sheets that these banks have. They're looking at, they say, yeah, our assets are these this collateral that we got. These homes, this portfolio that we have of homes, they're worth X amount. Well, they're going to find out if they start foreclosing and start having to sell them. They're going to find out what they really are, and all of a sudden, their value, they're insolvent. They're done.
Oh, yeah, all the banks. I mean, we have the banks are exactly what they were in the fall of 2008, okay? The same place. They remember we were talking about we have all these toxic assets. Well, what are those? What are they? What are toxic assets? You can actually buy one if you want. I bought one. You could buy a $2 million toxic asset now for $1,000. These things are they're mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations, the CDOs you hear about. And they have ridiculous values placed on them. They're, bubble values. And everybody knows they're not. Some of them may be worth nothing. I mean, we don't know. So Paulson tried to buy these things with this TARP money, and it wouldn't work. He couldn't buy them because the banks wouldn't sell them for anything under face value. They said, "Look, I mean, if it says $100 million on it, we want $100 million." And Paulson said, "Well, I can't do that politically. I can't do that." So he ended up buying preferred shares, preferred stock. That's how he pumped the money into the banks. As a result, the toxic assets are still there. We've just sort of papered over it. We put money on top of them, but they're still there. So, that problem hasn't changed at all. I just saw an incredibly interesting number. The top four banks, B of A, Chase, Wells, Citi, they have their total market capitalization is about $400 billion. And the value of just the second liens that they hold, $400 billion. If they had to write down the seconds, just the seconds, all four banks would close.
Okay, let's go ahead and look at where we're at right now. And I want to talk about we've done this a lot on the show and everything, but I'll recap it just a little bit. So that they could trade these mortgage-backed securities, they just wanted to get these loans, just create, I don't know, you can fog a mirror, sign here, boom, we got a mortgage. So then they could go ahead and they put it into a group of mortgage-backed securities. They can put it out there. They created a number for it to put it into an Excel spreadsheet so we can trade it. But they didn't make the transfers of ownership at the county recorder's office. So now we have people like you're saying. Yeah, I know people have been living in their homes, haven't made a payment in a couple of years. But they got 3 or more banks offering to refinance, renegotiate the loan, and they're going, which one of you guys am I supposed to do business with? So,
well, if there's a bank trying to renegotiate the loan, the problem here, just to point something out, is that when people say, the bank's foreclosing, I mean, 80% of the time, that's not an accurate statement. The servicer is foreclosing. I mean, we've created a program here. Treasury has created a program around these modify the loan things where the servicer, which if you think about it, the servicer has the least to do with the loan. All they do is service it. They don't own it. They service it. They get a 1%, 0.5% to service it. They also make the most money when they foreclose on a property. So we've got the people that have the least to do with the loan, that make the most money to foreclose, in charge of making decisions on whether they modify or not. In Congress a couple of weeks ago, someone testified to say, the only people losing money here are investors and homeowners. Banks and servicers aren't losing money, just investors and homeowners. Servicers are making money.
Well, this is the question that I have. I build up to. If they are going to, because they'll start running these through the courts. It's happening here. We started over a year ago. We're reporting, I think it started in Kansas or Oklahoma or something. They're saying, you don't have standing to foreclose on this guy. Show me, the paperwork. You don't have, so now we're starting to get, they're just running it through it. They just get some judge to bang the gavel and said, yep, this guy, because they said. All right.
That's over now.
Well, tell me where we're at on that. I want to understand because it's eventually going to have to take legislation for them to retroactively say, these guys have standing, or they don't. Or we heard about it with the notarizations that they were trying to do out of paper mills, out of, Lord knows where. So, give us an update on how this is playing out, as people are getting into the court system. Where are we at now?
Yeah, here's where it is. First of all, let's understand what happened here. The banks originate a bunch of loans, and they put them in a trust. In a pool, they're supposed to take this pool of loans and assign them to a trust. And the type of trust... Okay,
let's go ahead and hold it there. We're going into break. They are assigning these loans into trust. Let's go ahead and mark it down. We'll start and pick it up right there when we come back with Martin Andelman, trying to understand this foreclosure thing and the effect it's having on the banks. Will they be there next year, after next year? We'll talk about it when we come back. You guys stay right there.